we got a RFI from our PMC. Have you ever worked with a PMC before?
No. Why would I
Do you know what a PMC is? Project management company.
Okay. Everything has to have an acronym. Jeez.
Everything has to have an acronym. Anyway,
Ridiculous.
we asked a question. I started digging, peeling away the Band-Aids to check to see this stuff, and I now regret every bit of that action.
Is that why you started with such a heavy sigh? You're like, you have to get out from under the weight of what you just. I hesitate to say accomplished.
I mean, it was a sense of accomplishment of determining that, oh my, something happened, and now I have to deal with the ramifications of my discovery. And all I want now is to go back in time to just a few hours ago where I was ignorant.
Yes, right.
Didn't know that this was an issue, so that I could move on with my life. And now
So future you, I don't know who made these decisions earlier, but future you was not going to be pleased with whatever decisions were being made at the time, but nobody thought about that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
and we do that all the time in architecture, right? We compromise our future for the convenience of the now on projects, and it's so hard to because of deadlines, because of other incentives, because of inexperience, and there's a lot of reasons, right? And sometimes it is actually nobody's fault. It's like and then sometimes it absolutely is, and there's a whole spectrum in between that. Exactly. I see this with house remodeling, right? It's like my wife will say, "Hey, this would be a great project. We should do this," and I immediately go to, what is under that dirt? What is inside that wall? Mm-hmm. I don't want to know. I do not want to know, because it's going to do that same thing where it's like, oh, now I have to undo 20 years of somebody else's mistake, right? Or 40 years.
Funny that you say that. So over the weekend, we went and visited my wife's cousin who just bought a new house. It's nearing a 100-year-old home. Mm-hmm. Beautiful house, nice little old craftsman style house.
On the surface.
And it's got nice oak wood paneling all over the place, and, like absolutely beautiful. And you like walk through and you start to, like me always in virtually every place that I go to, I walk into a place and I start to see some of the issues.
Yeah.
And
this is totally you. You're to a T. It's like, And we're so good at this. This is like what architects do when they see an image out of Midjourney, and they're like, the fingers are weird on the person. It's like the whole thing is magic if you just step back a little bit. But like you walk into a house, like you said, it's really nice. Yeah.
So
you see the issues. You focus in on the smallest details, right?
I do have a problem. Yes, I do absolutely have a problem.
We should start a support group, an Archispeak support group for architects who are too detail oriented. Yeah.
So I walk in and I'm, I of course, like, I just saw a meme the other day, or a little TikTok video that was, if you have an architect's friend as a friend, and they're like walking up and they're looking at like some glass and, oh, look at this. And they're like talking through like the nuances of why that probably was what it was and everything.
They're trying to justify the design based on
or
metaphor, right?
Or you see those memes of architecture students who are like hugging and touching and like rubbing their hands across materials and all of that other stuff. And
it's great.
Sure enough, we still do this, 3 decades into our career, we're still doing it. And so, like I kind of ran my hand across the oak paneling and the oak trim, and I was just like, oh, okay. And I noticed that there was like a little bit of like, texture to it, which automatically led me to believe, oh, there's an issue with the shellac, the old shellac. Depending on like how you clean it, when you clean it, and what you clean it with, it doesn't really hold up very well if you clean it at all.
Yeah, right.
Yes. and it doesn't really hold up that well. And so there's ways. And so I started looking up and started to craft a text to my wife's cousin.
Craft
You know,
a text.
basically like I took, with a
You're
picture.
a prompt engineer, Cormac. You're
Yeah. Well, with a picture of the issue and solutions of how you can do all of this, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote it down, and then I stopped before I hit send, and I showed it to my wife. I'm like, should I send this
really
to?
want to send this?
I was like, should I send this to her? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is her poor husband this is just another one of those like things that has to go on his list. And I'm like, maybe I should hold off on this and let them get through. Like he's like replacing chandeliers right now and patching old plaster, horsehair plaster, by the way. And all of these
kind of plaster.
Exactly, the best kind of plaster. And all of these like little lists that just keep stacking up and stacking up on this, it's the joy.
I think this is a good, like, I'm glad you had these second thoughts because of the psychology and the interpersonal dynamics that you could be affecting. Plus, you're going to go on somebody's list of like, don't invite that person over ever again because they just made me have 2 more weeks worth of work.
Well, so yes. So when we were there this weekend, every time she would ask me a question, I would like, first, like the first gut reaction was, she was just like, oh, I think we're going to replace this back door. And it is this beautiful solid wood oak door. You never can replace something like that here. And so I'm looking at it, and it's got old hardware, and either the windows clearly had been replaced, and it was replaced with like a single pane window, and it doesn't have any weather stripping, and it's, there's a few issues with it, but you could easily bring that thing up to today's standards with modern hardware
standard.
and
and still have the quality of the old door,
and then still have that quality. And so then I start going through like everything that they can do to this door to make it a modern door.
Costs more than a door.
No, it wasn't that. It was just like, it was a list, because then I was just like, oh
my God,
cousin's husband, that you've got all of the tools to do all of this stuff. And he just like looks at me like, yeah, I got all the tools, but why is this going to be now part of this growing list of things that I have to do? And
so what did your wife say? What did your wife say about your finally crafted text? Did she recommend you send it, or did she say do not?
She was just like, save it. She's like, save that for later.
Yeah, she's like, put it in the drafts folder.
She was just like, I'm sure she would appreciate it, but in her mindset. So in her mindset right now, her cousin's mindset is she wants to get everything done now.
Oh, of course.
And
I mean, that's a nice mindset to have, because we all know how long this stuff takes and how long it drags out, and that we do lose interest and we do lose momentum and things don't happen. And then all of a sudden 20 years has gone by, and it's like, how come we never fixed this place up? So I get it. Like, you have to kind of strike while the iron's hot. And at the same time, that is a never ending job, right? It's
exactly.
It just won't stop.
Right. So. Exactly. So I basically, I copy or I selected all, cut it, moved it into the notes tab, and said, I'll save that for later.
Right. Yeah. That's what you're drafting.
I'll just go ahead and save that one for later. But it is a perfect project manager's RFI answer crafted response. So, it's got detailed instructions of how you would go about basically more or less rehydrating. It's like you can do one of two things. You can either remove it, or you can, essentially rehydrate it. Not exactly the correct word for it, but take denatured alcohol and rub it on there and kind of like reactivate it. And then you can spread it back out and all of that other stuff and smooth it out. Or you can take
labor intensive.
All of it's labor intensive, but all of it really is a way to avoid having to basically sand it down and start over. Yeah. And so it's a lot less labor intensive.
The modern answer to this conundrum is paint. Everybody just throws paint on stuff now, right? It's just cover it up. Yeah. It looks new. This is the HGTV-ification of old quality things, is to cover them with paint, like old brick fireplaces, old cool old doors. It's like, just paint it. And from 30 feet away with a video camera moving quickly through the scene, it looks amazing.
Oh yeah.
It looks like a fresh facelift of the whole place. But what you're talking about is like actually restoring the craft and the quality.
Yeah.
And restoration is a different game than this updatification of everything via the Home Depot paint counter.
I think one of the interesting things is so my wife always gives me these instructions before we go to places like this, especially like if it's her family, and she's just like,
prep you.
Like they've done all of this work, and
don't say anything.
Don't say anything, or just find something nice to say. Don't be a project architect, or just don't be an architect and say, oh well, you could have done it this way.
For every negative, you have to reinforce it with 10 positives. Yeah.
and the one thing that I can't do is hide my facial expressions. And when people say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" She's like,
Yeah, you've gotten in trouble on communication calls.
Yeah,
with the cameras on.
I've gotten in trouble on numerous occasions, and so
people just pick up on that. They're like, "Oh, Cormac is not happy."
I can't. Sorry, I can't hide. I can't hide my true feelings. So I will say, you will always know that I'm not lying to you.
You get the real deal.
You get the reality, whether you'll want it or not.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious.
And so I walked. Honestly, they're doing it. They're like, well, what do you think about this chandelier here? And it's like a small room, and it's got like a really small existing chandelier. And I was like, honestly, and they're just like, oh, well, this is really nice. You should probably, so like, here's the answer that should have been is, oh, that's really nice. I think you should probably keep that. It really, accents well. I'm like, nah, it's too small. It really makes this space feel really, it doesn't work with the space because one, it doesn't put out a lot of light. It's a really small chandelier for the space, so the scale is off. Start going through all of these different like Archispeak, terms of like why, that one light is. And I could have just said, oh yeah, it's nice. It's fine. Yeah. Right. Keep it.
Did your wife coach you on what to say when they ask your actual opinion? Because that is when you're going to give an honest opinion. And so she like, hold back, just say, she's coaching you. Just say, I'll think about it. And let me think about that. And then don't ever answer it, like kind of a thing. Or is she, I'm wondering how this dynamic works.
Then I got bombarded with, she started bringing out fabric samples for,
oh my God.
For a built-in bench. And she's like, well, what do you think of these? I really kind of like this.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, you are asking for an opinion. So here, and actually it was a good dialogue because she had just put up some really nice, very complimentary, very period wallpaper. And, but the wallpaper had a lot going on. And so some of the fabric that she was pulling out had a lot of things going on, but they were very contrasting of the pattern that was on the wall. And it was just like, there's a lot of stuff, competing for attention in this space.
It's called busyness.
And so you really, it's just like, so this is your opportunity to give it that punch of color, but really kind of like back off and just be complementary to like all of the other ones. You want something that kind of unifies the space rather than something that is kind of like just like, boom, here, hi.
Let me use some words. Yeah, let me use some words. It's like, you're talking about busyness, you're talking about confusion, chaos, right? Or it's like, well, how do you want to feel when you're in this space, right? Because like there's the look of it.
Yeah.
And you might like a lot of different pieces from a lot of different styles. That might be what you like, but do they complement each other? Do they go together? What's the composition? How do you want to feel when you're in the space? Do you want to feel relaxed? What kind of space is this? Is this a place for you to chill? Is this a place for you to like get work done? Like, and think about those kinds of, I love what you're talking about here, because this is actually a great thing to do, to step back and like, what are the goals of this space?
Oh, yeah.
Is it just to look good in a photograph for the real estate listing? Because that's different than How if you're going to live here, if you're going to live in this space, what's it for? How do you want to feel when you're in it? Do you want to feel serene? Do you want to feel calm? Do you want to feel
Right.
energized? Like those are different qualities, right? And I don't think people really think about space like that because they're so used to just taking whatever they get,
Yeah.
and not everybody has all the money at the same time to do all the things, right? And so it's like, let's state our goals and then we can work toward that. And to actually take people through that process is kind of a really cool place to operate from.
I started pulling out all of the, Archispeak from my toolbox.
So you brought your toolbox, your Archispeak toolbox with you.
I brought my Archispeak toolbox.
I carry it everywhere I go.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the American Express card. It's always in your wallet. Yeah.
Well, because that was the very thing as I started talking to her about it. It's just like a lot of people look at most of their projects as a room by room, and in a lot of times they don't really talk about the unity between all of those spaces. And then I just started walking her through like the big vision and then all of like the supporting visions and, how to like really tie all of that stuff together and think about it as, a group project rather than an individual project kind of thing. It was just like I was like, all of these individual, exactly. It's like all of these individual pieces like work towards the whole. And it's like, but if you don't have a vision for the whole, then all of these are just going to be like, and it's like, oh, I can see that you did this one in February and I did this one in July and stuff. And they're like, exactly. It's like,
based on the thermal comfort of a particular season,
right.
Not taking it all into account kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Right.
So I was just like, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not her architect. I am an architect who she asked an opinion, who as architects, I don't know if you know this, but architects have opinions.
Everyone has a different one, actually.
Exactly. and so I gave it to her.
That's the title for the episode. Architects have opinions.
There you go.
Turns out.
Surprisingly enough.
No shortage of, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I was having this conversation with my son and my wife today. He's home from college, but then he decided to take a real quick road trip down and visit some of his buddies down in Ohio who they were still in school. And so, he drove down there to see them. And then he started sending me pictures from, he was like, oh, I saw this. And it was a Frank Lloyd Wright house that he had stumbled upon. We had stopped by there before the last time, like he and I were there together. And I driven past it. And he had driven past it again. He was just like, hey, Dad, check this out. And so my wife asked me, she was just like, hey, have you been talking to Brendan? Is he on his way? I'm like, well, he's X amount of time.
Wait. Time out. Mom, Dad, I'm coming home for the holidays, which actually translated means I'm going to go visit friends in Ohio.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and by the way, Mom, can I borrow your work hard to do it?
Yeah. Can you fully finance my trip? Thank you very much. Please and thank you.
That is that perfect summary. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All of that.
I just wanted to put that out there for all the parents out there.
So I texted her back and I'm like, I think he's out sightseeing, and I spelled it SITE, seeing.
Oh, look at you.
And then I started thinking about it. It's like, what? I was just like, architecture's ruined me. Because it's like, when we visit a place, we go to the site, right?
Yeah.
SITE. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, so why isn't sightseeing? Because you were seeing it's just like, so it's either the act of seeing.
First, folks. This is the beginning. This is where this all begins. Where everybody out there now has to use that word.
Exactly. It's just like, I was like, I understand that it's the act of seeing, but seeing how you're seeing the site.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. I'm on board. I'm glad that you're really, really like laying it out there to explain this to the audience because they're so dumb. But but isn't sightseeing redundant if you really think about it? Like sight, I see, and then seeing, I see. Like I see, and we're gonna go see.
Yeah.
So I like your adaptation of this
It's
word.
like when people,
We're taking it over.
it's like when people
architects.
use the non-word irregardless. It's like
Yes.
not regard.
Right.
You know?
I'm confused. It's
or
very confusing.
exactly. It was just like, so,
There's
so
some
it's just
people
like,
out there like, wait, what? I've been using that word all this time and it's not a word? Yeah.
it's not a word.
There are many. Just like across. You don't go across to anything.
Yeah.
It's just
No, you don't.
across. You just go across.
Is that why I keep getting the red squigglies underneath that one every time?
That's why you get it. Yes. Yeah. The spell check knows better than you do.
It clearly does, yeah. Because it clearly, when I wrote down sightseeing as SITE seeing, that it was telling me that it was wrong.
It did.
But
okay, good. But
weirdly,
if you keep using it enough,
Yeah.
you'll update the dictionary and it won't correct
weirdly
you.
enough, it did not suggest sightseeing as SIGHT seeing. Like, come on, like why? Like, you can't
I'm
even.
relying on you, spell check, to help
Yeah.
me here. Autocorrect. I don't know what. Like,
Suri's basically telling me it's just like, I don't know what you're trying to say. Like, you're using
I don't
two words and they
I
don't
don't speak
like
that.
exactly.
I'm glad that you
But
brought up the Archispeak again because recently my wife pulled this out and she's
the
like, "Do you want this?"
glossary of architects and architecture. Ooh, it's like
Glossary.
it's the pocket handbook of Archispeak.
This is like wallet size. You can always carry this with you. We don't know where it came from. We don't know why we have it. My wife, I mean, my guess, if I had to guess, is like it came with something from when she was in school, or because I've never seen this before, so I know it's not my vintage. But she went to architecture school too, so she might have picked it up, or somebody might have given it out as a little gift. But I thought maybe we could pick a word and define it. Like let's read the definition. And this thing is a full-on glossary. Let me see how many pages. We've got 40 pages, which is 42.
But it's both
better.
architects and architecture.
Yes.
That seems awfully condensed. That seems awfully condensed for
There's
what
only
we
40
do.
pages here.
Only 40 pages to define who and what we do.
That's all you need. This is the Field Guide to Architecture. It's 40 pages. It is a 2-inch by maybe 3.5-inch, a little bit bigger than a. Here's a business card for scale. So
Oh, geez.
It's about a 1/4 inch bigger than a business card on all sides, and it's just a center stapled, cheap little book, but great. So if you were to pick an architectural word, it's got all of them. It's 40 pages, so they're all in here, right? Guaranteed. Throw out a word. Let's see if it's in here.
Juxtaposition. Our favorite.
I knew that one was coming. Jeez, you are. Okay, so let me see. A, B, C, D, E. There's no index here. It's only 40 pages. Let's see. J, J, J. I don't see any J's. Nope. Nothing in the J.
Because apparently it's not a word yet.
It doesn't have enough usage to qualify to make it into this book, I guess.
Really?
Which is weird because we hear it all the time.
I was going to say every single architect says it whenever they can.
As often as possible. Yeah. Well, let me
In
give
fact,
you some ideas.
when I was talking to my wife's cousin about it, and I swear I pulled out juxtaposition of, because of colors and spaces and things like that, and talked about.
Did your wife's eyes roll at that point?
Oh, I'm sure she probably did. She's like,
because you're the people who you're visiting, I'm sure were impressed, but your wife,
my internal eyes rolled. It's just like, man, if you
like
weren't here,
out.
I'd beat your.
I wish I didn't say that. Come back into the
Exactly. So come back. Come back.
Oh my gosh, funny. You were sad yourself. Okay, so I actually see.
I was internally disappointed to myself. In myself.
If I went to the F's, surely there would be Frank Lloyd Wright in here if this is the glossary of architects. But there is I don't see anybody's name in here. So I think immediately disappointed already because the title does not match the contents. So you cannot judge a book by its cover. It turns out. But there are things in here like facade fenestration, free plan, entablature, deconstructivism.
Okay, so entablature. That was a word that's been used recently in some conversations, because there's both the entablature of an exterior fenestration, right? And then there's an interior use of entablature. You would think that because they're sort of two different terms, if you read it. So I don't know, like, does it pull up entablature in your little glossary here?
I'm pulling it up. I got it. I'm ready.
Okay.
You want me to read it now? Well,
please.
So I was thinking you were going to say, we're talking about entablature recently because we were talking about the sphere, right? So obviously.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no. This was something specific to a project that I'm working on. And there's, there's clearly two distinctly different uses of entablature.
So you want to judge the completeness and accuracy of the glossary of architects and architecture. That's what you're going for here. Okay, ready? Entablature. I think I said I can't remember what I said. I think I said it incorrectly for the first time. The different classical orders are reflected not just in the forms of the columns in the capital, but also in that part of the composition above the column, the upper part of the order, which is made up of an architrave, a frieze, and a cornice.
Yes, that's it.
That's the exterior version. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have another?
Nope, that's it. That's all you get. This is a short book, Cormac. It's only 40 pages.
Well, apparently it leaves out all of the architects of the glossary of architects and architecture.
That's volume 2. That's probably volume. I don't have volume 2, but I mean, that's a pretty good definition, but it also leads me to want to learn more immediately. Like, what is an architrave? What is a frieze? What is a cornice? I mean, this is a book of knowledge, right? And it forces me to connect the dots, which I appreciate. If this were a digital document, those things could be hyperlinked, and it wouldn't take me so long to look those items up.
Let's see. Hold up your phone and see how much bigger it is from your phone, and see if. Ooh, so essentially, rather than carrying both of those, you could carry one that actually does have hyperlinks.
Convenience. I choose convenience. Yes, definitely. So that's a good word to start with. Maybe we'll do a reading out of this book. I'll just keep it here on my desk. Anytime we need,
we're going to do a reading.
Anytime we need a new topic, anytime we need to define a word that you just said that people don't understand, I don't do that. We'll pull this book out and see if it's in here.
There's a few words that I've been using most recently, but I don't think that we would have to change the one. I'm pretty sure it's not in there. And 2, we would have to change the rating of the show.
I could only imagine what you're going through, my friend. Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here we are. Happy Thanksgiving. It's my birthday. I mean, by the time this episode comes out, it will definitely have been my birthday and Thanksgiving, which fall on the same day this year. So I will feel particularly left out on the day. That's just how that goes.
What are you talking about? The entire world is celebrating. In fact, they're holding parades in your honor.
I guarantee you, they're not thinking about me at all.
They are sportsing in your honor.
There will be much sportsing on the birthday.
There will be mud sportsing. See? So, I mean, think about this. It's like, my wife's birthday is on St. Patrick's Day, and, clearly no one's thinking about her except for me, because at some given time of evening, no one's thinking at all.
Right. Another beer.
Exactly. So I just tell her that the world is celebrating her with, green and shamrocks and, and beer,
I'm sure that makes her feel better.
Toasting her with beer.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes her feel a lot better.
I said toasting with beer, and I I said toasting in beer, and I cheered like this, except for this is coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm out of coffee, by the way. I was just looking in my empty cup, and I'm just like, so this marks the day, the 1-year anniversary of my family and I getting in the truck and camper and driving away from our house in Southern California. Yes. I can't believe it's been a year. It is incredible how fast the year goes by.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a year ago, just as a reminder for those who have been here for more than a year, but also for those new folks who haven't. last year on my birthday, we had breakfast in our house for the very last time in Southern California. We had our driveway full of U-Haul U-boxes with all of our things packed up into them, waiting to be picked up that day by U-Haul, the U-Haul company, to ship all of those containers up to Oregon. And actually, they were going to go to a storage facility first because we didn't have a place to move to. Like,
Right.
we didn't do what you did. We didn't find a place ahead of
Actually,
time and make it all easy. We did, I think, the more adventurous thing. It was a little bit, obviously, there was an adventure to be had here. We got in the camper, and for about 8 weeks, maybe more. I can't remember the date that I think we put an offer in on this place December 5th. So from November 23rd to December 5th is not that long, but we didn't move in until January 17th or 27th, something like that. So we were in our camper in the cold of winter in Southern Oregon for that long. Like, that was, I mean,
and it was
I think
cold.
we took like a hiatus on the show because it was just like really difficult to get.
We did try once to record with you in the cab of the truck.
Right.
You know,
I think it was that's called a sound booth. Yeah.
I think it was more a ploy for you just to go and get warm than anything
No, the camper
else.
was way warmer because when I was recording, it was so cold out and I couldn't have like the truck running. I wasn't going to just sit there with the truck running the whole time. So I literally had my puffy jacket on and a beanie, and I had my laptop in the seat next to me, plugged into like a battery station so that it would stay charged. And I was Wi-Fiing back to the trailer where I have the Starlink set up to get internet access, which was our internet for that entire time. And now it continues to be. It's what's connected to my house, and I'm in rural Southern Oregon. There's no internet service here other than satellite internet service. So it's actually worked out. But that was I just told this story when I was at Autodesk University and to somebody, and they were like, "You did what? That sounds amazing." And like, I think that's the general sense, is that it sounds amazing, but you try living in a small trailer with 2 other people for that long, doing homeschool and work and all those things. And like, it's fun in the beginning, like a camping trip. And then it's just like cabin fever, kind of a too close.
Well, but think about this, that at the end of the day, now a year later, this is a story to be told.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
It is not, like, there was a little bit of like misery. There was a little bit of discomfort.
Oh, I would totally do it again though. Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting because, so like, I asked my son, I was like, "Are you going to be when you drive back, are you going to stop and go sightseeing?" He's like, no, I'm just going to drive back. And it's like, where is that sense of adventure? I mean, you're out, you're all by yourself. You got a car. Apparently we're paying for gas, so.
So you did agree, because you're like, apparently, I don't know, I guess it's just the default.
But I mean, what would you have done in your, if you were 22 years old, or sorry, 20 years old, what would you do when you're 20 years old? I would totally like take advantage of that and, like, hey, I'm going to go for go exploring and stuff.
It's a different era. Now you punch the coordinates in, the address into where you want to go, and it takes you the fastest route there. And I feel like, this really gets to the idea of, you've watched these, the motorcycle, what were those called? Like with Ewan McGregor and.
Oh, yeah. So it was The Long Way Up, The Long Way Around, The Long Way Down.
Right.
All fantastic episodes. So highly recommend that to everyone.
Kind of inspired by Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right? Which was like one of the ideas in that book was that we don't take the highway, right? We take the back roads, we take the side roads, we take the scenic byways so that we see things along the way. Yeah, I know we've talked about this before on the show, but I agree with you. But I do think that was kind of a different, this is an era of, you're thinking nostalgically right now. I don't think society is really built like that anymore, because we don't use paper maps. We don't look at like what the possibilities are. Just generalizing here. because I think to some extent, you and I do this, right? You took a cross-country road trip with your son to see sites. You didn't do it to get from one side to the other as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
Right? So that idea is, I think, not something that very many people appreciate, talk about, think about. I don't know. It's just not something that's in somebody's conscious as much as it maybe used to be, where, remember the old commercials? It was like, take a road trip, like see the sites, go to the national parks. And now it's like, go to the national park. It's not like what the journey is along the way. It's like, no, it's all destination based, and it's about efficiency. And there's so much focus on efficiency in today's world.
Right.
In architecture, we see it strongly, right? All of the tech is to make you more efficient, not necessarily be more creative or be more expressive, or some of it is, right? But this idea of efficiency and productivity and that's the new America, and it's not so much the exploration, the creation. It seems there's a lot less emphasis on that.
Yeah, people don't appreciate the journey, and this is journey of projects. Journey. It's like, as you said, it's efficiency, expediency, immediacy. Like, let's get this done. It's like, oh, I don't want to wait for
instant gratification.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I want to see this thing, but I want to be there now so that I can get back home, and say, yeah, I've seen it. Check. I've experienced that, and now move on.
I got my selfie there.
Exactly. And I remember when I had my old Triumph TR7 and basically started on the East Coast, pointed my car west, had the little ball
compass.
Thank you very much for
floaty thing with the the letters on it.
Exactly, floaty thing that's and basically just pointed my car. Yeah, I had paper maps. I had that wonderful big book from AAA that had every state, and then had like the blow ups, so like Little Rock and things like that. But then otherwise, that was it. Or we were getting into the era of MapQuest, but never really dealt with that. It just it was like I pointed my car in the direction of where I wanted to go, and I got there however I got there. And that one was kind of a forced sightseeing trip because I would break down on multiple occasions and have to fix the car. And
it was a Triumph,
and things like it was an old British car, so there was that. But
such sweet reliability right there.
Exactly. But that's to your moving story, it's just like, those are the stories that enrich we have the destination, but what was the stories to get us to that destination? And you think about that, in architecture, and I think about that, both with historical architecture or even like modern architecture, and like what we do to get to that, to that end point. And, I think we said it a little bit when we were talking to David Bradley, and, he was talking about the small celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
And, the journey are those small celebrations. And I was giving some employee reviews this past week, and I I pulled that out as, it's like, make sure when you're going through your career, because these are all, junior architects, and they're in the beginning parts of their career. I was like, take time out of your career to celebrate those moments, celebrate the little wins, celebrate, just every little thing. The one thing, and I know for a fact, because you and I both, through the course of this show, both got licensed. Later in our career, we both got licensed. I don't remember you and I, other than just like, yay, you did it kind of thing, stopping to celebrate just a massive milestone. We never bothered. We just said, okay, all right, we're licensed, on to the next task.
Well, with you in particular, that did not happen because you didn't tell anybody that you got licensed.
Well, we've already gone through that story of, it's like of somewhat shame and embarrassment of not having it for as long as I should have had it.
You're such an imposter. Yeah, like everybody else.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about our moving story was that we didn't know where we were going to end up. We actually did not pick a spot to land. And that was kind of, and that was based on prior circumstances where previously, we sold our house twice. The first time it didn't go through. And so that's what I mean by that. We had to relist it and sell it again. And because it didn't go through the first time, we ended up having to, the entire deal fell through. We had a deposit down. We had a place in Washington that we were aiming to get to, and we had decided. And that fell through. It was a terrible experience to go through because we lost a bunch of money in the process because people are weird. And then we decided, like, we're not doing that again. And so this time we were like, let's sell the house again, which happened very quickly. And that time we were like, until we leave the house, this is not done. And we just treated the situation like that. And then it was like, now we're going to get in the camper. We know which direction we're going. We don't know what we're going to find along the way, where we're going to want to stop. And we'd been through here before, so we weren't going into the situation blindly. But the idea was like, let's actually just take our time to figure this out because nowadays, like thinking about this whole journey, the map, the all of the research that we do ahead of time, like how many hours when you were moving did you spend on Zillow and Redfin and just Google Earth and analyzing the hell out of these decisions, right? And they're big decisions. So they do require analysis. But at the same time, where does that adventure, like what if you go see it with your own eyes? What if you go experience it yourself for a period of time? Like we've talked about site visits, right? And when an architect gets a new commission and they go, nowadays it's all done digitally. It's like, get out to Google Earth, do the sun study based on the weather data, and it's all this stuff. It's like, what if you just went to the site? And we've talked about Jersey Devil before.
Yeah.
And the idea of they have an Airstream. This is a design build company, a very small one, with a few guys, and they go live in an Airstream on the site before and during the project so that they fully experience that site. Well, because context matters. And I think that's thinking about, for us, picking a place to move, it was like, let's actually see where the resources are. Let's actually live there and experience the weather. Let's actually see what the people are like by spending time with them, by going and eating at places and shopping and doing all those things. Because those are the things you can't do digitally, right? You can't.
Yeah. And as you recall, I mean, and you get the constant texts of like my mileage milestones that I had barely.
Cormac sends me pictures of his odometer, of his super high mileage, very newish vehicle.
I am not even at 2 years right now, and I'm closing in on 66,000 miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have
and you work at home.
Yes. And I work at home. But yeah, I think by the time we ended up moving here, I was already out of the initial like early 30,000, 3 years, 36,000 mile warranty was already, come and gone by the time that because you were right. I mean, one of the things that we did do, we actually drove a lot back and forth from DC to Detroit, looking at these homes because we're moving 9 hours away from where we're 9 miles 9 hours away from where exactly from where we were for the past 14 years. And so we wanted to see if this was the right fit. Where wanted to be closer to family, sure, but we also wanted to be exactly that, experience the place, experience what we're getting ourselves into to make sure that we actually, this was the right place. And it wasn't as true kind of like hitching up the covered wagon like you guys were and doing, hopping on the old Oregon Trail.
Right.
Thankfully you guys, nobody died of dysentery, but,
that's a,
but I mean, that was,
people.
Exactly. But I mean, that was really, not very many people do that anymore. Nobody has that, like, that sense of adventure of it's just like, okay, we're done with this place. let's just literally pack up the covered wagon, point north. And you guys did. And not with a, like with an area where you were thinking that you could go, but it was ultimately ending up being like, this is just like, let's find a place to go.
Yeah.
And, that, yeah, I mean.
Well, the idea was to end up in Washington again. And then I think part of the thinking was also like, well, that fell through. Did it fall through for a reason? Maybe we're not supposed to go there. And for us, I mean, we had it in our minds, I think, that we were going to go that far again, up to the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, which is where we were aiming for. But we found the longer we just hung out here and really considered the resources, really considered the needs of the family, really considered the prices of things, property, things like that, what we could get for how much we had. All of those kinds of things start to play into it a bit more. And it was much more real. It's way more real than just flipping through listings on Zillow, right? And I have to say, we probably visited, 250, 300 houses in this area, driving around just to see, because there's one thing that's like, you see the listing, you see all of the components of that listing, you get to read the terrible writing of the realtor about trying to explain how amazing this place is, and then you go and you're like, you visit it and there's like literally a meth lab across the street, right? It's like, and it's that kind of thing where you only will see it if you go there and do it, right? And for us, it just became like, oh, this feels right for us. And I think that was kind of a liberating experience, to make it more about how it feels than thinking, like making it very much like this is not just a brain-based activity. This is like an emotional activity. It's a whole body activity. And all of those, taking all of that into consideration much more seriously than you can in that more disconnected way of just flipping through listings on a phone, right? So it's kind of it's old school, I guess you could say it that way. But at the same time, I feel like we are the designers of public space. We have to, at some level, practice what we preach, which is experience, right?
I would,
go for it.
Yeah, I would just bet that you're far more connected to the place you're at now than you would have been if you just basically sight unseen, picked it from a listing and all of that other stuff. I mean, you really went through the immersive experience of understanding, of doing, kind of like the philosophy of the Jersey Devils, where you basically just picked up, you moved the Airstream to wherever it is that you were doing it. You did the pre-effort, during effort, and now you're, and now you're there. And that was one of the things that, and this is just a little small diversion, but this is one of the things that I always struggled with in school when we were working on projects where we had to do like a project on a place that was kind of like sight unseen. And I remember I chose, for some reason, to do a project in Detroit, which was the Lafayette Tower by Mies van der Rohe. And it was supposed to do a write-up on it and all of this other stuff. And I just felt so disconnected with it that what did I do? I was just like, well, I got a weekend. I'm going to drive from Auburn, Alabama to Detroit, Michigan.
Site visit.
So
you're going to go sightseeing.
I did a site visit and I drove up there and I was just like, I understand the place more. And honestly, what I felt, granted, did it like change what grade I ended up getting? I don't know. I don't think so. But I could speak about the place in the first person, about really understanding and knowing what it was that I was looking at and assessing, rather than just saying that, well, based on all of my readings from this, periodical or that, book or whatever, this is the assumption that I drew, rather than saying that standing on the site and seeing the transition from the city to this place and then this place to the next place and all of this other stuff, and then I just kind of like flowered it up with more Archispeak and stuff. But, it was just one of those things that I feel like what you did, really kind of enriches like the decision-making process to a point that like really actually, in this, to bring it back to architecture, it makes our understanding of the place and our interpretation of the project brief that much better. Right?
Yeah, and I feel like now that we've been here a year and really experienced all the seasons, because there's one thing about going sightseeing, like you're talking about, for a day or two, versus, I mean, for us, it was more like 7 or 8 weeks. Granted, during that time, we did make a commitment to buy a house here. So we, starting in, December, we had to go through all the due diligence and all the hoops that you have to jump through to qualify for a property and all that kind of thing. But so it's not like we were still considering even going somewhere else. But at the same time, spending that much time is still not enough time to spend to do that. And that to me, I think, is why there's been such this drive away from it, which is like, well, it's not efficient, right? You can't spend all that time taking all that in, because we just don't have time for that. And it's crazy the value that it actually does deliver to you. And so now, having been here a year and experienced all the seasons, it makes me feel even better about this place, because that was one of the big drivers for us actually moving was, well, we want to be in a place where we experience the seasons. We want to be in a place where there's access to nature. And I mean, all of those things it's like that intuition that we had of why we wanted to go somewhere very different has really played out over this year and reinforced that, we should trust those intuitions. And through that adventure that we did, that kind of unlocked that for us.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, like now being able to kind of like experience like all of these seasons. I mean, you now get to understand and learn and relish in the joys of poison oak when it's cold, poison oak when it's hot,
Dude,
poison oak when it's
It
rains.
doesn't go away. Yeah. I actually had it last week for the 10th time. So I think
for the 10th time.
Gotten it once a month. Yeah. Once a month, every month. Yeah.
Yes. Those are his seasons. What is the temperature like when I get poison oak?
It's just learning what poison oak looks like in every season, because right now you just can't tell. It's just a stick. Oh, don't touch any sticks. No stick season. Don't touch a stick season.
Yeah.
My son had it so bad a couple of weeks ago, and he's been out in the yard. Like, his job is to pick up sticks. Because we have a lot of trees, branches are constantly kind of coming down. And then when it comes to like time to mow and use the weed whacker and all those things, it's like, I don't want to be throwing sticks into my shins, into the blades, into anything. Right. And so it's like, I just need you to constantly pick up sticks. Well, one day, man, he got into poison oak sticks, it turns out, and it was everywhere on him. And he was just constantly like, scratching. And I'm just like, dude, don't scratch it. It makes it worse. Like, and it's just impossible for him not to scratch it. So.
Exactly. So
yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's very bad here for that. I mean, not everywhere, but it's like, you got to know where to go, where not to go. You got to know what it looks like every season, because it looks different. And yeah.
I can at least successfully say that there is no poison oak in the suburbs of Detroit.
Yeah, well, in where you
I'm sure there might be, but not where I'm
in Maryland. There's a lot of poison ivy.
Gosh.
In Maryland, right? So you kind of had to look out for that. And
yeah,
definitely. So you got any Thanksgiving plans? Football? You're gonna watch the sports?
Okay, I'm just gonna sportsing, because
throw it out there that's your main activity.
What is the annual? It used to be the annual hope that Detroit doesn't lose really, really bad. But this is the year of the Lions, and we're currently 8-2.
I was going to ask what the record was, because
we are 8-2. We are.
It sounds like a pretty good record.
We are the second best record in football, in the footballs.
Who has the best?
The Philadelphia Eagles.
This is Sports Talk. This is the Sports Talk segment, right? And we're Cormac Schools, Evan, on sports.
Exactly. And then, but then there's also the Iron Bowl this weekend, and then the game this weekend, which is the Michigan-Ohio State game. And then there's
Oh,
also the
eligible.
last race of the Formula One season, which, you know,
Ooh.
which is going to be great. Except for then I'll have to go a couple of months without having Formula One.
Where's the last race?
Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. Wow. So can
Abu
you
Dhabi
give
or
a
Dubai?
synopsis of the quality of the Las Vegas F1 race? Because we talked about the Sphere.
So
We
yeah,
alluded to the fact that they did the racetrack, and I know there was a bunch of drama around kind of the
so,
initial racing with the Ferrari picking up a sewer lid or something and totally destroying their car or something.
yeah.
But I also saw like Lewis Hamilton, I don't follow F1 at all, but he did say like he thought it was actually a really great racetrack. He said there were lots of opportunities to overtake people, and he thought it was really, really fun.
So
So
both.
there's like the side of the media and the hot takes and all of those, and then there's like
Right.
what actually happened. And so I'm wondering, from your experience, from your perspective, what actually happened. Would you say it was successful?
So you're treading into waters where I start to geek out. So, disclaimer there for anybody
Second
who
hour.
says,
This
"All
is
right,
where the
click, we're
second
done."
hour of the podcast begins.
Exactly.
All right.
So-
well, that's fine with me, man.
so-
Let's talk about it.
Well, let's just talk about it. There's tons of complaints about like how the all of the practice sessions were. Normally, these are race weekends where there's other races that are happening at the same time, like Formula 3, Formula 2, and other races and stuff.
I didn't
And
even know there were other formulas.
Yeah, so they're the junior leagues. Everybody's
okay.
striving to get to one, but
Okay.
then there's always the junior leagues and things like that. And then there's the Formula One Academy and all
Formula
of these
One
other
just sounds
things.
so much cooler than
It
any of
does.
those other
It does.
numbers too. So I thought it was
Exactly.
just a cool name. I didn't know there were tiers. Okay, that makes sense
Right.
now.
So it didn't have. So there's what's called rubbering in, which means that like there's more and more grip being applied to the streets, and everybody's complaining about it was late at night and it's going to be too cold, and it was the desert, and anybody who knows the desert knows that it doesn't really hold heat very well, and of course
In the winter, or
in November.
No,
And
the
so
temperature swing is enormous in the desert.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, people were like, it's just like they were racing the week prior in Brazil, and then before that it was in Mexico City, and there was
How did
it
they
was
get
warmer.
those cars to these different?
Let's not even start
Okay.
talking about
All right.
the carbon footprint of Formula One.
Well, I'm just
and a normal
logistically
season, because
I'm
it
just
is
interested in
absolutely insane.
logistics. It's got to be insane.
Oh no, they like, if you think about it, like Formula One is in a way, it's kind of like the poster child for like efficient shipping, and how do you modularize your entire setup
Internationally, yes. Right.
and then move internationally, like like they had to go from Las Vegas, Nevada, USA to the Middle East and have it all set up and ready to go to race and all of that other stuff within a week.
Luckily, the track isn't moving, right? But
Exactly.
it's just the things that it's just
Right.
the cars and the pit stops and all the supplies and the mechanics and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But yeah, I
So-
mean, the setup for the track takes
Yeah.
a very
So
long time.
logistically, because, a lot of people were complaining about it being a road course and all of these other things.
Isn't that what a Grand Prix is supposed to be?
It is, but people have lost sight because now they have got dedicated tracks, and and so what to expect and all of this.
My
other
only
stuff.
experience here is the Long Beach Grand Prix, right? Which has always been like this Southern California installation of this.
Yeah,
people
it
going
was
every year, and it's on the road. It just goes through Long Beach.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way. I mean, everybody, like a lot of people were complaining about all of the challenges and stuff, and like the inconsistency. I was just like, you mean like a daily drive? Like,
No, I was going to say like every architecture project, like that's all it is overcoming these challenges all the time.
I was like, how about this? Why don't you throw in a couple of like, soccer moms in some SUVs in front of them, and like them having to traverse around that? Or how about some sightseers who are like, make it, you want to show,
on the strip
do you
in the
want to
middle
show
of the
that
street.
these people are the best drivers in the world? Put them in some of, like, put them on I-94 cutting through the middle of Detroit and see if they can traverse that.
Oh yeah.
You know?
No, they're totally Princess and the Pea kind of people, right? They expect perfection. They expect perfection of themselves and their own performance, but also of every other aspect of the sport.
Yes.
Because it's so high dollar. It is so, performance machines. It's incredible. And it's funny, like these people are big babies, man. Like they complain about any little thing, right?
Yeah. And so that was all they were having, is they were having lots and lots of complaints. I mean, the current world champion, he was complaining that this is just a horrible track and everything else.
He's just giving himself excuses to lose, right? Like,
he wins, and he won his, 18th, record 18th race of the 23 race season, and locked up number 1 and number 2 in the drivers' championship and stuff. And so for that team, and, everything went well for them. And honestly, after everything was said and done, almost everybody who is hypercritical about Las Vegas basically ate their words, because it was actually, race-wise, it was actually one of the best races of not only this year, but I would probably venture to say, like, for the past at least 5 years.
Do you think that has something to do with it being a completely fresh experience for them? Like that, it's never been there before. It's a new track. There's so many new options. They have to deal with temperature, climate, all those things, and it's
all of those. Yeah,
that actually made it interesting, right? It wasn't like honestly, they're so used to that course that they know it like the back of their hand. Like this is a new thing.
There was multiple lead changes. There were multiple passes and things like that. There was lots of overtakes. There were things that, normally don't happen in a race. It's like, like once the person, is in first place, which, this year's been Max Verstappen, and he's in first place, he just like sets cruise control and just goes, because
autopilot. Yeah.
And that's it. And this one was a true, honest to goodness race. Like people raced. And the thing about it was, I really feel like the star of the show was the city. It was such an amazing, like all of the shots, the commentary, everything. They were talking about the race. They were talking about the city. They were talking about the Sphere. The Sphere played a huge role in all of this, because
super way to leverage that property in this, because
free advertisement. Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for the Sphere, but the idea that the way they were able to use it as a tool for this race, which is not the purpose of the Sphere, right? The Sphere is what goes on the inside, but they leveraged the crap out of that project to make this an even better experience, right? Because helicopter shots, like from what I heard, I haven't watched, it's like it was the star of the show, because it was. I heard they had a countdown clock on the very top of the dome for that you could only see from the helicopter, but it just made it super cool for the fans to watch.
And whoever, applause to whoever was running the graphics of that whole thing.
It's incredible.
When there was like a lead change or something like that, they would like flash up graphics of like the person, Max Verstappen in first, Charles Leclerc in first place, those kind of things. And then they would like show the face and stuff. And then every so often you'd have like the little emoji, come on, and like, the eyes would like, the eyes would like, move with it and stuff. And then if there was like a yellow flag, the whole Sphere would light up yellow, which by the way, in my opinion, for just, like a lot of racers, they're just like, I didn't know there was a yellow flag, that's why I didn't slow down. And there's no excuse for them. It's because like this big, massive globe, glowing yellow. There was no way for them to get away from it.
I actually heard there was a lot of discussion by the graphics team and F1 that there were certain colors in what they were showing on the Sphere that they had to stay away from.
Yes.
Because they didn't want the drivers
to be distracted.
That there was a problem or that there was an issue when there wasn't one, right? And so
exactly.
But then I guess what I also
yellow,
heard
and a couple of other
there was
ones.
like green and blue and yellow. There were colors that they couldn't use, and then it was like, I guess what I heard was, and this is probably completely secondhand or worse, but like the drivers couldn't even really see the Sphere because I don't know. So.
it's interesting. I would, if anybody's interested in this, and we may just be talking about stuff that you've like tuned out on, but to go and look at it. See, one of the things that I really appreciate about Formula One is when they go to these places, there is a sense of like integration into architecture for a lot of these places, like the road courses and stuff in general. Like when they go to Baku, in Kazakhstan, or when they go to like Monaco, and it's like part of the whole scene, and you really get to actually, you're almost immersed into the architecture of things as much as you are the race. And then just the artistry and the engineering and everything that goes into the car. I mean, if this isn't one sport that isn't so closely related to how we do things in architecture, and it's not like a single person is that one and only person who can do all of this stuff, but it's the team, it's the engineers, it's the designers, it's the clients, it's the financiers, it's all of that.
What you're
stuff.
saying is true, but I will also disagree and say money is no object here. There's no budget.
Oh, no,
they will do anything.
There is. They have a spending cap. They do have a spending cap. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, they do.
And how do they justify that spending cap? I mean, the team, because in architecture, we can't justify our spending cap. Like people put in way more hours than they bill for.
Well, no, they actually scrutinize that pretty well. So like, you're not allowed, it's interesting how scrutinized it is. And I wish we in architecture would scrutinize as much as they do, because
the buildings would be way less interesting if we did, Cormac. I'll just put it out there.
It's when you remember how we always talk about when you set constraints, you know how to like work towards those constraints and establish, like work efficiently and all of that other stuff. And I think we could still be able to do a lot of the stuff that we do, if we now granted, let's talk about like a Formula One team, 2 cars, right? So think about this in parallel with, but think about this with architecture and in Formula One. It's just like, so they've got 2 cars that they field with 2 drivers. So they've got the support team for each of the drivers, the nutritionists, the people working on their health, and their trainers and all of these, their handlers, their marketing team per person and all that other stuff. So they've got those. Then they've got their engineering for each of the driver. Then they have, all of the people, like hundreds of people back in the factory actually working on making sure that car and all of the components and everything are, to spec and to budget and everything else and all of that other stuff. So basically, to be able to field a Formula One team and be able to achieve the high level of performance that they have, they're such a massive team. See where I'm kind of going with this? Like in architecture, if we could do that, think about what we could be able to produce if we had the budget to be able to develop a team of experts to do basically every nut and bolt of a building.
Well, and because the business model of architecture is short staff a project and figure it out later and cut every corner you can and do it for as few hours as possible, at least on paper. And like all of those things are working against what you just talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that's what I'm saying.
The difference between building a high performance team and just building a status quo mediocre team to build something that's code minimum and the lowest bid. Then we'll take it. Yeah. First, we'll design it with the least hours possible to code minimum, and we will low bid the project. That's how buildings.
So they'll have. So in Formula One, though, they'll have it's like, okay, here is the budget cap. Not every team can actually raise that money or have that capital to get to that budget cap. Can you
give me an idea of the number you're talking about here? Do you know what it is?
It's actually a couple $100 million.
Just a couple of $100 million.
Per season.
The biggest building I ever did was $65 million. So, and that took 5 years. That wasn't every year, right? So go ahead and look it up. Let's see what.
Yeah, I am. I am.
All right. We need some real information here.
The budget cap is $135 million for 2023.
Okay.
So if you think about that,
That's to travel the
wait,
world to pay for
is
all of
you
those team members that you
all of that,
mentioned. It's for all the
the
cars, all the parts, all the engineering,
all of the
everything.
wind, all the wind tunnel testing, all of the basically you got teams that read the rules and regulations. So, you've got code, you've got people who are like reviewing the code.
Right.
You've got people who are writing the specs. You've got people who are like, doing the design work. Then you have people who are fabricating and building. I mean, there are so many parallels between Formula One and racing in general, but Formula One and architecture. It's just there's a different sense of efficiency.
One is way more healthy. I know it. Okay, the next thing I want you to look up now, real time info gathering here, is how many people are on a team, like on average. It would be interesting to actually know. Put in some hold music while you do your search.
Okay, so average budget 140.
145.
Yeah, well, that was just that was a year ago. So, it used to be at one point in time there was no budget cap, and you literally
Most
could
money
spend
wins.
however much and it was exactly that. Let's see. Total number of employees in F1 teams. Okay. So there's 10 teams. The biggest team
here.
So like the team that has the lowest budget is the Haas F1 team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you recall when we were walking through Autodesk in San Francisco, and you looked down and you saw all those CNC machines and things like that.
At the R&D facility, yeah.
Yeah, those were all Haas machines.
And
okay.
So that's the sponsor. That's like the team.
So that, well, that's the team owner.
Right.
Gene Haas is the team owner, and he's big into racing. So he has a series of different racing teams, NASCAR, Formula One, whatever. So anyway, but he's got the lowest budget, or he spends the least amount of money, and they have 250 employees.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, let's talk.
I can't imagine those people are. Do you think that those people are employed year round? Like they're actual just company employees at that point, or is it seasonal? I don't know.
No. This is a year long thing, because what's happening right now is they're actually working on the design of the new car for 2024.
Oh, I bet they're more than that far ahead, don't you think? They're probably working on 2025.
No. Well, I mean, there's regulation changes and things like that they've got to kind of like, so they're working on, like mid-year, they've already started working on next year's car.
It's like the iPhone, like they're like 3 years ahead on the, that's where the design team is on, or maybe it's even farther out. But it's like,
well, they can't go too far
because
ahead.
it takes because new rules,
because they change regulations like every few years, and they don't publish them in advance for you to basically kind of get a little bit of extra time to start working on that.
Well, so because you could just put more resources into that, and that would be an unfair advantage potentially against a different team. So 250 people on the Haas team. That's what you said.
And that is the low end.
And
now the high end is the Mercedes AMG Petronas team.
Okay.
You want to venture a guess?
450 people.
You are right.
Really?
1,200 people.
You're like, no.
You were spot on. Way off. 1,200 people. Yes.
10 times.
Yes.
And so you're saying there's a cap. So you're saying like, based on this, that with 1,200 people, you can actually hit the cap that they set.
Yeah.
But with 250 people, you have a lot of headroom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so think about this. If you were able to have that lean of a staff, but still have the same money that they're spending. for
be
the 1200 team.
ultra competitive, right?
Oh yeah. You'd be able to field,
Well,
but
this is what technology enables right here. I mean, this is like the premise of my other podcast, right? It's like you actually could achieve 10x your potential
yeah.
with with tooling, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not just talent. Like talent matters, don't get me wrong. Talent is like
Yeah.
probably the most important thing. But what those people can do with the tools that they have, I mean, to show, like, I assume Haas is competitive, right? Like they're not.
They're
Where do they typically
they're
fall?
middle of the road. Usually,
That's
and
how many teams are there? You said 10 teams.
They're 10 teams.
So for
So
a
20
tenth
20
of
drivers,
the budget,
20
let's
cars.
just say it's a tenth of the budget. I know it's a tenth of the people, but maybe let's say it's probably not a tenth of the budget. But they're in the middle. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's so, I mean, but again, all of these teams though, they're staffed with, they don't staff the entire team with, like one project manager and a bunch of interns.
Yes. No, I totally knew where you were going with this, which, and that's why I made the comment about like, let's understaff the project and figure it out later. Like that's the business model of architecture. This is not that at all. F1 is not that. And what's interesting to me is like, all these, BD plus C giants reports comes out, right? Firm giants. And then they rank firms based on revenue and all these things, and they design and sustainability and different market segments, like best healthcare design firm, best whatever. And it's like, we made it. We're in the top 500. We're in the ENR 300, and we're like 167th. Like we're talking about 10 teams here.
Yeah.
And in order to play in the field of 10, like you have to be talking and thinking like you were talking about, where it's like, no, we have the best talent. We have the best technology. We have the best, all of these things that we can possibly put together with our resources to be a top 10 team. That's what firms should be competing for. And I know like, easy for you to say because you're not running one of those firms, but like that's just a different game. Like they're playing a different game completely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because at the end of the day, I would love to ask those firms, well, how are you spending how are you spending the money to procure the top talent, top experience, the top knowledge, the top
deliver
research
the best possible thing for your client.
Exactly.
Like build the best buildings that are going to last the longest, like all of those things. Yeah. I mean, is it to deliver the code minimum project with the least number of hours to the lowest bidder to build it?
Exactly.
Like those are completely different worlds. And I feel like there's so much complaining in architecture about the public and clients and the consumers and the, not understanding us, the value of an architect. It's like, well, look at what you're competing in. You're competing in a soup of mediocrity. Like that's what you're positioning yourself against Joe contractor down the street who says you don't even need an architect. Like that's what you're competing against. And so it's like we have done this to ourselves. And I get it. It's hard. It's really difficult to run a competitive, high performance business, but firms are doing it. Like, and you can name them off at the top of your head. You know which firms are playing that different game. Yeah. And it's because they are playing a different game and they have chosen to play a different game. They're not wondering why they're not playing the game that they're playing. They're doing it on purpose. Like it's total strategy, right? So it is like, it's kind of crazy making because we totally have done this to ourselves. And yet we look around like, how come nobody gets us? Right. And it's like, oh, what are you doing about that?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what like goes back to my quote a long time ago that I sprung on my friend Brett, a listener of the show, friend of the show, great guy, right? And it was like we had some bitch session going, and I just said, "So what are you going to do about it?" Right? And then he totally used that against me years later, right? And it's come up several times, and it's like he's like, "So what are you going to do about it?" And he was just waiting to to drop that back on me.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? It's like, well, stop complaining and start doing. And that is what, at this holiday season, Cormac, we all just need we need a good rest, but we also need a good kick in the butt.
Exactly.
Get off our butts and go do something
great.
Yeah,
Brett is always good about asking, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I'm glad for it, though.
It landed the first time, and he picked that where I dropped it. He picked up what I was putting down.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I'm actually very proud of us to be able to talk a little non-architecture, but totally wrap it into
bring it back
into architecture.
That's what we do here.
Yeah.
Well, happy holidays, my friend. And I'm not saying we're not going to post any episodes, but we might post less episodes. We might actually take a little bit of a rest here, but I'm feeling invigorated. Like I've never felt better about what we're doing here. And we do have some big ideas. We just need to get off our butts and execute. So I guess that was a pep talk.
So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. What are you going to do about it, Cormac? Anyway.
Well, hopefully everybody will see what we're going to do about it.
That's right. A little foreshadowing in there with the word.
There you go.
It all goes back to sightseeing, doesn't it?
Hey, look to see if foreshadowing is in that.
No,
your handbook.
That's not Archispeak.
It should be.
No, in the F we have facade, fan light, fenestration, of course, flying buttress, free plan, freeze, functionalism, futurism. That's it. Those are the words you get in the F category.
That's it.
Not even your favorite word wasn't even your favorite F word wasn't even in there.
Yeah, we're not allowed to say that one.
Not touching that.
Exactly.
All right. See you next time.
You too.